sisters, this is something that all of us can do. You don't have to get trained as a counselor to be a burden bearer. You don't have to learn some techniques, okay, to be a burden bearer. If you're willing to give your time, if you're willing to give your presence, I tell you, it can make a world of difference in someone else's life. I don't know whether you heard about this. It was an experiment done in the United States of America. It was an experiment. You know what they did? They advertised this, saying, if anyone wants to talk to us, okay, we are willing to do that for a charge of $5. We will not give you any advice. We will not give you any counsel. We will just listen to you. $5. You'll be surprised. When this experiment went on, there were hundreds of people who called this number. They were willing to pay the money for somebody to what? Listen to them. Hey, we live in a broken world. We live in a world now where people are actually looking for someone to come and sit with them. Perhaps just to listen to their stories. One of the things, I don't know, doctors are here, and you will be able to tell this much more than me. One of the things that when you visit an elderly home, when you visit a destitute home, one of the things those people want to do is, they just want to come and sit with you. Sometimes, I have seen people who wants to touch us. And there are people, elderly people, who want to tell their stories, but nobody is there to listen. I want to say, sometimes these people are found in our own homes. I had my mother, aging mother, 8 years with me. When I look back, sometimes I regret it. Sometimes I regret it. Sometimes I feel I have not given her enough time where she wanted to narrate her own stories. We all live in a busy world. Sometimes we tell them, as soon as they start, we tell them, enough. I've heard it 100 times. But the therapeutic value for them in narrating their own stories again and again, we don't know what good it causes to them. I tell you something here. This is something that happened. I heard it from the brother, so I know this is authentic. There was this assembly in Bangalore. A first generation convert who comes from a very broken family. He and his sister came to know the Lord. And then they had a mother who was mentally retarded. And then she was in actually a kind of a home. She would suddenly go off from the home, and these people have to go around and find her from the street. People were exploiting her and all that. And this sister also, at some point, she married a man and moved away from that place. Here was this young man living with his mother, who was mentally retarded. And one day, the church people got a call. My mother passed away. Church was a loving church. They all went to the home. It was the evening. They prayed, sang songs. The body was laid in that small room. And this boy was crying inconsolably. And they were all praying. And then, because it was evening, they said, no, the funeral service could only happen the next day. Okay? So after prayer, all the brothers and sisters, they went back to their homes. And they said they'll come back the next day. And everyone left the house. And then this brother, a good friend of mine, when he returned back to his home, all of a sudden in his mind he thought, today evening, this brother is going to stay with his dead mother's body all alone. There is not a soul from his blood relatives who could come and stay or be with him. So this brother said to his wife and children, I'm going to go there, stay back, and be with him during the night. Let me tell you, brothers and sisters, this good friend of mine is a preacher, a man who was able to counsel and all that. But you know what he told me? That day, through the night, he sat there, and all of a sudden, this fellow will start crying. And all that he did was to put his hand around his shoulder. That's it. He said, no, I didn't have to say a word to him. I didn't have to open the Bible and preach to him. All that I did was to give him my shoulders. You know what? Something happened in between. Young boy looked at him and asked him, Anna, I don't have anybody else now. My mother is also gone. Would you be my brother? Would you adopt me as my brother? And he said he would do that. I tell you, brothers and sisters, this young boy, his life has not been easy. I think he's still struggling and all that. But he knows that he has somebody in his life whom he can count. And this is a ministry that all of us can do. And I see a lot of young people here. I want to encourage you. You never know what your friends are going through. You never know what your friends are going through. They'll be sitting next to you in your college. They'll be chatting with you. They'll be laughing with you. But you'll never know what they are going through internally. If you're willing to listen to them, if you're willing to allow them to open up to you, we don't know what would eventually come out of your relationship. Let me also move on to another character that we find in David's life. This is from verse, this is chapter 17, 2 Samuel chapter 17. And then if you read from verse 15 to 22. Now I call this passage, or I want to give this title to the passage, a bunch of less known or unknown people. So if you want to read it and understand it fully, please note down the passage. It's a very fascinating story at that point. Okay? A turning point in David's life. If these people were not available at that point of time in David's life, I want to say this, David would never be back in Jerusalem as the king. A bunch of less known or unknown people. And I want to just give you a brief overview of what you find there. Okay? You read about an unknown girl, meaning her name is not mentioned. You read about Jonathan and Ahimaaz, the sons of Zadok and Abiathar. Then you read about an unnamed woman. Then you read about an unnamed errand boy. Now I'll tell you this here. You know what? David is in the wilderness now, hiding from Absalom and people. And then Hushai, who is the advisor to David. And David also, in Absalom's palace, now we also have another advisor, Ahithophel. And Ahithophel has given an idea to David. Now this is how we have to go and, Ahithophel has given an idea to Absalom. His advice to Absalom in order to know, hunt down David in the wilderness. And Hushai comes to know about it. And Hushai passes the information to to Abiathar and Zadok. And they, through a servant girl, passes the information to Ahimaaz and Jonathan. They run to the wilderness. On the way, somebody spots these young people. Okay? There was one woman who said, no, come into our house. I will hide you. These two people, sons of Abiathar and Zadok, they are hidden in that house under a well. And then once Absalom's spies are gone, they come out. Eventually they go to the field and tell the information to David. David, this is what they have planned and you need to move on. So on and so forth. But you know what I want to say here? If you read through this passage, I always wonder, what benefits do these people get in order to risk their lives for the sake of David? What benefits are they going to receive for the sake of risking their lives for the sake of whom? David the king. Their names are not even mentioned. Now I wonder, after David returned back to Jerusalem, did David send a committee, or did David send a team in order to find out who all helped me? I want to give you what? Recognition. No. But I want to say, these are people who are willing to stay behind the scenes and bear the burdens of others. These are people now who are willing to stay behind the scenes. No applause for them. No spotlight on them. No laurels for them. No recognition for them. But they will still do what is right. They will still do what is needed in that time. I tell you, we live in a world where even if you help others, what is your mind thinking about? What am I going to get in return? At least mentioning of my name. Right? Somewhere in the chart, so and so was also part of this grand game that happened. Right? But these are people, for them, all that matters is doing the right thing. If they find a need, they will do it. Even if it means they will not get recognition or will have to even lose their lives. How about us? Now, these are things that happen in your minds. You have to evaluate your mind. Bearing the burdens of others, helping others. When you think about it, sometimes, you know what? It's not an easy thing. It's not something, that's glamorous. It's not something that's going to be spectacular. Something, that's rewarding. Would you still be willing to do that? Would you still be willing to do that? I tell you, it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. And especially we as servants of God, and sometimes, we are just blown off by the things that we see and have experienced. I remember this, a brother from Tamil Nadu, for a long, long time, this servant of God was receiving a very small amount of money from an unknown lady in England. Somehow she got this man of God's address, and then she was passing a small amount of money regularly. And then eventually this man of God, the servant, full-time missionary, he got an opportunity to be in England, and he made up a mind to go and see who this woman was. So he took that address, went to that place. So eventually, when he came to the house was locked. This happened a few years ago, maybe 30, 40 years ago. The house was locked. So the neighbors said, she has gone around to sell her baked buns. She's gone around to sell her baked buns in a kind of a small cart. Okay? That actually was something now he never expected. He stood there for a while. Eventually, this lady came with a small cart, and there's a kind of a scooter, and then her buns are all kept at the cart at the back. And then he was really stunned, taken aback by what he saw. He went into that lady's house, and then he said it was the most humbling experience that he ever had to go through. A woman supporting the work in India. And I tell you, taking away the burden, the financial burden of this man of God who is serving in India. And what she was doing was not something glamorous or spectacular. Perhaps, if this man had not gone there, nobody would ever know this. But for eternity, nobody would ever know this. But I tell you, it is through those behind the scene agents that many of the good things in the world still exist. Do you agree? Do you agree? So never ever hesitate to take up that role to play behind the scene. Now I can tell you stories after stories. I love sharing stories. And this is about George Verwer. How many of you heard about George Verwer? Operation Mobilization founder. He passed away recently. And when he retired from OM, officially a few years ago, they produced a video to celebrate his ministry of working with OM. And then in this video, it was like a documentary where they take George Verwer. It's like taking him back to history, helping him to narrate the whole story and all that. And then there's a beautiful scene in that documentary. This is about a time where heard of Logos and Doulos ship and all that? Yes. So there comes a scene where George Verwer would be in that ship, and he will walk down the stairs. From the deck, he moves down the stairs. Finally, they reach the bottom of the ship. And as you reach the bottom of the ship, you know what? You can already hear the sound of machinery. Now, when they speak, you can only hear that with the background noise. There's machinery running and all that. You know what? And there comes a man, and then he is doing his work. He's an engineer. He has got that, the cap, the helmet. Okay, when you work in an environment like that, he comes with that. It looks very shabby, soiled and all that. And then, I tell you, I actually wanted to ask someone whether this was orchestrated or it was just extempo. You know what? He'll suddenly call that guy. You come here. And then he asks him, how long you have been working here? It's an amazing thing. This man says, I joined the ship in 1970s when it came to Mumbai. He's an engineer who gave his life to serve the Lord. And he said, the Lord called me to this mission, and I joined the ship in 1970s. You know what George Verwer does? It's an amazing thing for you to see that. He almost breaks down. And then he looks at the camera and he says, you people know about George Verwer. You people know about OM. You people know about douloship. For George Verwer to go around the world, for doulos to go around the world, there are people out down in nobody's sight with all this muck and all that. They are serving behind the scenes. How true is that? Brothers and sisters, I want to encourage you. Today we live in a world where people do something only if they have what? Benefits and rewards. I want to encourage you. Many of the things that we do for others may not be even known to people. Many of the things that we will put our hands. Okay, it could be your giving. It could be your help. It may not be known to others. It may not be publicized in any of the magazines. There may not be any reports about it. But if you do it faithfully, as you do it for the Lord, and I am sure one day when you reach the other shore, eternity will reveal that and reward it. Bearing the burdens of one another. We can still learn about a few more characters. People like Shobi, Makir, Barzillai. Amazing people. And one of the things that I want to say is, you know what? If these people did so many things for the sake of David, David also was a faithful friend. And for me, you know what? People say, blood is thicker than what? Water. That's not true. You know what? When they say that, they try to say blood relations are what? Are the most. If you have good blood relations, praise God. But I want to say, you know what? If you look at the people who stood with David at the time of his most crucial time, you'll find others. Gittite, Archite, Barzillai, all the Ammonite. Why did they show so much of faithfulness to David? Because he was such a person. May the Lord help us to be people like some of these characters whom we have just thought about, so that even through our lives, many people will be blessed. The very reason the Lord has kept us here is to what? To be a blessing to other people. May the Lord help us. May His name be glorified.